Well, I understand now why this community can't unite, because they're so busy staying alive.
Welcome to Understanding the Unhoused. My name is Joshua. Through a series of interviews with individuals who are experiencing homelessness, my intention with this podcast is to increase compassion and empathy for the unhoused. When people see an unhoused individual, they can feel fear, anger, apathy, sometimes all three. My hope is after hearing their stories, hearing what it's like for them on a day-to-day basis, it will make it clearer that these are just people. People who, through a combination of bad luck, bad choices, and, let's be honest, a broken system, have found themselves without a roof over their heads. Okay, enough ado. My next interview is with Jill, a former social service worker in the state of Utah who, through a series of very unfortunate circumstances, has found herself living in her car. Jill is trying to blend in still. She is trying to be seen as a productive member of society, but because of that, some of the services available to the more visible homeless community are not available to her, which will cause much deserved frustration throughout the call. As a quick heads up, there is some technical issues here and there with the connection, but they pass quickly. Okay, please enjoy the interview. All right. Jill, thank you very much for talking to me. First, how are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. Calling from Salt Lake City, Utah.
And can you talk a little about your situation?
Absolutely. And I'm going to introduce myself by way of a letter, and it was my very first time posting on Reddit. I think 20,000 people ended up reading the letter, and it was kind of my introduction to Reddit and my introduction to kind of this new identity of homeless person.
Please go ahead.
The following is a letter I will be submitting to the Housing Authority, the Utah Homeless Services Board, and the Governor's Office. I have submitted one other such letter on here and was absurdly directed to utilize the KSL classified ads. With all due respect, this is not a classified ad, but a call to all Utahns to have compassion for the unhoused. It is meant to bring attention to the fact that many of us are simply one minor emergency away from homelessness. It is a call to action to those who are able to care enough about the life of a stranger who is going through difficult, life-changing times to lend a hand. Sometimes it truly does take a village. I could have never fathomed that after 52 years of being a productive and contributing member of three major cities, Seattle, Tucson, and Salt Lake City, that I would be facing the holiday season without a place to call home. The list of things I took for granted, the list of things we as Americans take for granted in our daily lives is simply too long to list. Please do not judge a man until you have walked in his proverbial shoes. My name is Jill, and I'm writing from the back seat of my 15-year-old SUV, which has been my home since August 15, 2024. My path to becoming houseless began when my husband was laid off from his job of 7 years in December of last year. Around the same time, we were notified by AMC, one of the big three apartment management companies, that instead of renewing our current lease, we would need to move units at our expense so that they could remodel ours. This ate up half of our $5,000 safety net. Upon signing our new lease, we were shocked to discover that due to, quote, market value changes, our rent would be increasing overnight by $500 a month. Between my husband's unemployment, my gig work, and the remainder of our $5,000 safety net, we were able to stay afloat for the next 7 months. However, in August of this year, when we asked the property manager for an extra week to pay our rent, we were instead met with a 3-day paid vacate notice. Facing Utah's eviction attorneys, we really had no chance, and less than 30 days later, threatened with arrest, we in haste made the traumatic decision which of the worldly possessions we had amassed over our combined 50-plus years of full-time employment would be packed into the back of our SUV. I want to note that I'm a very resourceful person. I worked in social services for 20-plus years. We attempted to access help from everyone you can imagine. Our first week of being without a home was a whirlwind. We had enough funds to pay for 3 nights at a nearby cheap hotel. I spent the first night perusing the homeless and urban camping Reddit discussions, trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible about what my husband and I could expect from this new life of ours. In all honesty, however, no amount of preparation could have readied us for the hell we would soon be facing. From manically giving away upwards of 75% of the possessions we had crammed into our vehicle to make room for us, to mastering the art of peeing in a bottle, to being awakened by police batons banging on our windows. Had I not already had an official diagnosis of PTSD, one would definitely be in my near future. In 3 months, I have now lost 42 pounds. I've become extremely vitamin and nutrient deficient. I've developed a severe hiatal hernia that has not only made food digestion difficult, but has led to 24-hour periods of throwing up acidic bile, an experience I can only imagine less traumatic in one's private home bathroom. We have stayed alive as a result of sheer resilience and will, along with the help of a few compassionate strangers and the unrelenting cheerleading from my younger sister. However, as a 52-year-old woman with a history of depression and complex PTSD, a history that actually brought me to Salt Lake City to work for Optum Salt Lake County, I'm fearful that our days of surviving out here are numbered. I've spent the past 6 nights nearly every body part frozen in a state of near paralysis, choosing to keep fighting only because I feel for those who would eventually find our corpses rotting in what I feel more and more is like our eventual double coffin. 90 days crammed into the seats of our SUV and all the pain and shame that comes with no longer having any level of homeostasis has reduced 2 capable, able-bodied, contributing members of society to a couple of tore up from the floor up, semi-disabled Utahns desperately crying out for help. If I could condense all that I've learned into one aha, it would be the realization that surviving homelessness requires 99.9% of a person's physical and mental acuity, and the 0.1% remaining simply isn't sufficient to do what is necessary to become rehoused. I will finish by saying Utah has something called, I can't remember what it's called now, but they want to basically make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And as I think about those 3 adjectives, I just have to wonder what happened to my husband and I is definitely not a rarity. And living 1 minute at a time does not feel brief. I'm now 8 months into this. And should we somehow climb out of this nightmare that has killed all of our hopes and dreams, I can't fathom surviving a repeat drill of this. So this was a letter that I wrote. And like I said, 149,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you said you're now 8 months, is that now? You're 8 months? Or
yeah. So we're at 8 months now. And
oh man.
Soon there's a lot of discussion about whether if you have a car, you're homeless. We're soon to be without the car. I was doing Uber Eats and basically our axle broke and the car is now not functioning. And I hate to share this, but you want to put a marriage through the test of time. We are no longer together. So I'm
so sorry.
Yeah, so I'm out here by myself and soon to be without a vehicle. So it's tough at 52.
Yeah. Based on what your letter said, is it safe to say that this is just because your apartment situation happened the way it did? Like, if you had been able to find another place, do you think you would have been okay? I mean, it sounds like it was just a lot of bad things happening all at once.
Well, not only would we have been okay, but we're talking about literally less than $1,500 could have, less than $1,500 could have the prevention piece of this.
Yeah.
And I read story after story of people where a couple $1,000s could have prevented this. And we don't have the safety nets like we used to. We don't have the family support. And, during COVID, I think people got, the help was there. And then when COVID ended, there was there's absolutely no help, nothing.
The administrations in place tried to get rid of that money as fast as they possibly could.
Yeah. And I think here in Utah, there's also this belief that the church is going to rescue everyone. And I mean, I went to my bishop and his exact words were, we were told to get out of real estate last year. In other words, you know, they aren't helping people. So, I mean, they're just the safety nets they're not in existence. And I really do see a time where I've heard in California, there's tens of thousands of people like myself, you know, people who are situational.
Yeah. The hard numbers for that HUD does every year, they have a point in time count one night,
right,
like 4 a.m. every year.
Right.
They go out and count, and that's the number that they put out there. But yes, that doesn't count people like you living in your car. That doesn't count people that are couch surfing.
Exactly. And I think we have to start looking at the difference between this group of chronically homeless, you know, the people that tend to have the mental illness and the substance use issues, and differing that from the situationally homeless. I am soon going to be defined as chronically homeless. You know, in not too long, I will fit that category if I don't get rehoused. The face of the homeless really, truly is changing. And I don't know if you know this, but the number one group right now facing homelessness are individuals over the age of 50 who are working, but who experience some trauma, like a rent increase and that made their housing unaffordable. Yeah. I mean, this is an affordable housing issue.
Yeah. Exactly, because of the overall unaffordability of everything. And
exactly.
Not just housing, but everything else.
Well, everything. Yes. I've heard that they're going to criminalize people living in their cars. And you're facing looking at your things and saying, you know, I mean, we even had a storage unit, but you can only do things so quick. And my efforts was trying to get ready for what I thought was going to be a real chance at saving our place. And I mean, it was a good 10 minutes, you know, a 10-minute court, and it was done. Yeah. And it was done, and we had the sheriff at our door, and I mean, it was traumatizing, you know, for two people that, you know, don't have criminal past, or, I mean, it was scary.
I mean, it sounds like you were both working jobs your whole life.
We were both working. We had two incomes coming in. And the truth is, people, I hate to say it, but people coming from other states, you know, where paying $1,700 is nothing. And, you know, when 16 plus, you know, the charges, you're talking $2,000, when $2,000 is the majority of what you're pulling in after, you know, taxes and everything, we're paying upwards of, you know, 70-80% of our income was going towards that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that the system set up right now is for the chronically homeless. When you think about the crux of the social support system for people, the people who have the keys to the housing are the mental health and substance use agencies. And if you don't have those issues, what is the system that's set up for people like myself? Where do I go to get help? Because those are the folks who have the keys. And so there isn't a system set up for the situationally homeless. Because it's not just going to be a matter of getting first, last, and deposit now. We now have an eviction on our record. Right. You know, which is huge here. You know, if somebody's looking at having a new family enter their place, and we have an eviction on our thing, and somebody doesn't, they're going to take the other person. After 8 months of living like this, I mean, I would love to say that both of us are raring to get back into full-time work, and mentally I am, but our bodies have gone through, I don't really know how to explain it. I was homeless for about a year when I was 19, and that was very different than at 52. You know, I spent decades building up my identity and who I am, and this full person with, you know, likes and talents and hobbies, and it's really been whittled down to the woman who lives in her car.
Can you talk about what your day-to-day is like
So the axle just broke a week ago. So before that, we would get up pretty early because we've been doing the DoorDash, Instacart, Uber Eats. You know, we've been doing the gig work to just basically get enough money for food.
Right.
When we started off, I knew that getting into a hotel once every couple of weeks was going to be critical just for the good sleep. For me, taking a bath is just, an incredible healthy thing, hygiene. And so we really concentrated on making sure we had enough money to do the one hotel a week. And fortunately, we found a couple places that for $50 or $60 a night we could get in. So we basically would do the gig work for the majority of the day. Up until a month ago, I was doing pretty regular interviews at your Walmarts, at your grocery stores.
Okay.
So I worked in mental health here. Unfortunately, I worked for the organization who manages the Medicaid population, and it's United Health Group. I didn't have a great experience. And so going back into that here is not an option. So that's why, I kind of turned to the gig work, which I love. I love doing the grocery shopping for people and stuff like that. So spending most of the day doing that. And then if we had a hotel room, obviously we would go there. But the majority of nights it was looking for a place to park the car because believe it or not, there are very few places where you can.
That's the question I was going to ask. Is there a place is there like a park and ride type of place that you can go to, or do you just have to find a city street that you can sleep?
Just have to find a city street and hope that, the different things you have on the windows don't give it away. I had looked up that Walmart early on in our venture. I thought that Walmart was okay, and our very first night actually there, we had the batons banging on the windows, there was literally probably 50 cars that the police went through, and one by one checked our ID, checked our insurance, and told us all that there was no overnight camping there, and got rid of all of us.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy because I thought that was a safe place to go.
I was going to ask if you had tried Walmart, actually, because I've heard that's a place that you can.
Yeah.
But even that's going away.
Well, I just think the numbers are higher and higher.
And,
Which brings me to another thing that I've only thought about recently. When I was working within the system as a mental health advocate, one of the things I learned was the people who hit the crisis system, the hospital system, more kind of got access to, the greater services, right? We want to, if we're looking at utilization of services, we want to help those people who are hitting the system more. And I thought, okay, the chronically homeless are the people that we kind of think about, the people who are blocking the entrances to businesses. These are stereotypes. The people who are getting arrested, the problematic, homeless, quote. And what are we doing out there? We're being as stealthy as possible. We don't want to be seen. We don't want to be known. We don't want to be on the radar because, God knows that's how we're going to be able to continue to live in our car. Yeah. We're never going to be the quote big problem. And so it makes me think that's working against us in a way.
Like trying to stay under the radar, out of sight. That makes sense. It's a double-edged sword because you want to be able to get to those services, but you also don't want to be harassed and seen as, like you said, one of the homeless people that are blocking an entrance to a business or...
as much as I try to, I'm trying to still meld into society.
Right. Very sorry to hear about your marriage deteriorating. Did he move on somewhere else?
No,
or do you not want to talk about that?
No, I have no problem talking about it. I believe that we will eventually. I don't believe that our marriage is over. But when you take two people who are very set in their ways, 50 years old, and put them into a car. My husband's 6'2". He's a big guy. I'm
Yeah.
pretty small, but two people just in a vehicle where we still have a bunch of stuff. It's just, it got ugly, to be perfectly honest. And
Sure.
so we kind of decided, and this has happened probably 3 times during the 8 months, we kind of decided right now that, he's going to do his thing, I'm going to do my thing, and if one of us somehow gets ahead in a way, we'll of course come back, to each other.
Yes.
But yeah, you know what I mean? It's not like we're ready for divorce. It's just we're going to kill each other in that car.
Yeah. Of course.
And I mean, it's a hard thing, but at the same time, I felt like we just weren't going to get anywhere. We were spending too many hours just arguing and playing the blame game and things that I don't want to do with him because I love the man tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, that situation, I can't even imagine how the strain it can take on a relationship.
Living in a car during the winter in Utah.
What do you think the most inaccurate perception is of people that are in your situation?
That poor choices always lead to this end. And I think there are going to be enough people. Well, I'll give you an example. My latest post on Reddit was 10 reasons why homelessness is getting worse in Salt Lake City. One of the respondents said 10 reasons, and not one of them was personal accountability. Well, certainly I'm accountable for the fact that I didn't have more than $5,000 in my safety net. I can be accountable to that. Beyond that, I don't know what him and I could have done differently to not end up in this position. And, as far as resourcing help, as far as making responsible financial decisions, when you have rent, when there's no cap, and I've heard other people on your show talk about this, when there's no cap on rent increases, they can increase overnight your same unit by $600, and I didn't get a $600 a month raise. I don't know, I don't know who can afford that, and all I can assume is that people are doing things like doubling up on families, things like that.
Roommates.
We just didn't have those capabilities.
Yeah. It's frustrating to me when I hear, because I follow that subreddit also. It's frustrating to me when I read people that are still so bent on blaming mental health, drugs. Yeah. It's just like, especially, I mean, just look at the economy that we are in right now. It's so easy to fall into that.
But I think that's what people fear. I think if they have to believe, it's too close. It's too close. And if they can believe that, well, you must have had substance use and mental health issues, but it is going to happen to more and more. There's no question no question. And I don't know at what point it'll tip the scales,
Maybe there will be a breaking point and something will finally snap. But it takes leadership, it takes money, it takes so many things coming together that are so far apart right now. Yes, and it also takes a united voice. I understand now why this community can't unite, because they're so busy staying alive. Surviving, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've thought before, if the homeless community could get together, they could call for change on such a level, but you just gotta figure out how you're gonna eat. And I kind of wondered about halfway through, was that my bigger purpose? Is that why I'm going through this? I thought, Jill, you can barely stay alive. You can't unite these voices. I mean, it was a real in my face realization that I can't. I have to stay alive first. What I have done is put my story out to Reddit, and basically with the hopes of changing people's minds, and in the process I have gotten some help. Reddit has been incredible for people, not just helping financially, but helping camaraderie wise. People really, some really incredible, I've met some incredible people on Reddit.
And like I said, I had never even gone on it before becoming homeless. I had never been on Reddit before.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you found it, because it is a big deal when I go in there and I just see the amount of advice that people can give, the help that people offer. It's heartwarming. It really is, considering most of the attitude towards the homeless is so cold. And
absolutely. And also being able to help. Like, I have a long, history working in mental health, and I've gone on to the suicide one and have responded to several people, suicidal, and I felt like, wow, I really do have some value still. So it's been for both, getting help and also remembering, that I have an identity, still.
I mean, so you work in
mental health specifically, yes.
Okay.
Yes, in the Medicaid population, the SMI population.
Is there any route that you can get back into that now, do you think?
I'm not sure that I want to. Guidance Health Group has they have the contract, so I'd be working for them again, and they do all the Medicaid management. So not something I want to, but I do believe that getting a traditional job outside of gig work is the only way out. I jokingly spent a couple hours the other night looking at, kind of the $1 million question, how does one beat homelessness? And I found 3 people talking about it. One person said they got lucky and crossed paths with someone willing to take a chance on them and give them a place to stay until they got on their feet. Another one said he stripped at gay bars and got enough money together. And the third one, she set up an OnlyFans site. I say that in jest because 2 of those are obviously not something at 52 that I'm capable of. I don't know how people get out of that. Other than, traditional employment and somebody giving us a chance. But I do know that God knows what my limits are. And I know that He is very well aware that not only am I at kind of the end of what I can do, but now without a vehicle, I'm really going to be facing, I don't know what it looks like. And I could say that's scary, but you know what? Every day of the 8 months have been that scary of not knowing. So, some of you would say, well, Jill, I am scared, but I just have to believe, that I was taken down this path for a reason. What that is, I haven't seen yet. So.
Hi again. Thanks for listening. If you know of any unhoused individuals that would like to be interviewed, or you would like to submit an interview yourself, please reach out to us through the website, understandingtheunhoused.org. Click on the contact button, send us a quick message. We'll get back to you as soon as we can and get things moving. Also, while on the site, if you're feeling generous, please click on the donate button. There is a very low overhead for this podcast, but there are costs involved. Thanks again for listening. I hope after hearing these stories, you will have a little more compassion, a little more empathy, and a better understanding of the unhoused.